Hello everyone, I am Akash Chawda and today I will make a presentation on my dissertation topic entitled Welcome to the Desert of the Real, Hyperreality and Blurred Boundaries in Postmodern Hollywood. This is the chapterization of my dissertation and let us start understanding this topic with the introduction. In the introductory chapter, I have cleared the theoretical framework of my subsequent chapters, and starting with the main thing, what is hyperreality? Hyperreality is a concept theorized by French philosopher Jean Baudrillard, and it is a concept which says that the uh, what we say the uh, boundaries between what is real and what is the representation of the real, which is simulation, is blurred. So this is what hyperreality, and this concept he has given in simulacra and simulation. And we know what is postmodernism is. Like it rose against the reaction of modernism, and in the postmodernism we have seen in the many novels that how stories are being told, like they are fragmented narratives, often non-linear and all those kind of things. So these kind of experimentation have been has been adapted into the postmodern cinema also by the French directors. They have done such kind of things, and Baudrillard in his works says that as for the cinema, I am still very much in love with it, but it has reached a despairing state. Despairing state in the sense that the cinema in contemporary time does not portray the reality, but it rather constructs the reality. It gives the model, the mapping, with no origin of the truth. So in this way, the cinema has lost its authenticness of the reality, and this led to the crisis of cinema in the age of reality. And instead of serving as a mirror that faithfully reflects the real world, cinema is now, as Baudrillard says, engages in a cold collage. There is a kind of inversion effect in cinema between the reality and the representation of the reality. And for this, I have selected the three movies as my primary text: The Matrix, which explores the controlled simulation; The Truman Show, which mediates the reality of its protagonist; and Fight Club, in which we can see the identity crisis. And particularly for the Fight Club, I have taken help of the work of James Fredrickson's The Logic of Late Capitalism and Hypermarket, which was theorized by Jean Baudrillard. And this is my hypothesis and the research question, like how these movies uses the narratives and visual techniques to construct this hyper real world, and in what ways does it challenge the notions of traditional reality and simulations, and how the characters experiences this hyper reality and manipulation, and how it reflects the broader cultural experiences, and how these films utilizes the hyper reality to critique and satirizes the contemporary consumer culture and social structure, and what does this film suggest about the agency and autonomy in the hyperreal and simulated worlds. So in my literature review, I have gone through the related review of the literature, and what I found is that all these three movies have been widely analyzed by the hyperreality, and there are also sub points also, like media constructs and controlled reality and voyeurism and surveillance. These are all the things that have been reviewed and analyzed in this work, in their work. But the critical gap which remains, that the psychoanalytical dimensions of the rebellion. How do the protagonists rebel, and do they have the agency, or do they have genuine freedom, or the resistance itself is become commodified in the postmodern movies? So that we will see, and are they able to escape from it or not? So my chapter 3 delves into the two movies, The Truman Show and The Matrix. In these two movies, the common theme is hyperreality, constructed world, and media control. We know that in The Truman Show, we have the example of the sea heaven town, which is simulated town in which Truman was living. And for The Matrix, we have the digital simulation, and the movie envisions the quite bleak and dystopian vision of the future, in which humanity is entrapped by the sentience, the artificial intelligence. So in this way, these both movies constructs the world. And also, as for the media control, we know that in the Truman Show also, not only the electronic media but print media is also in the controlled is in the controlling position to prevent Truman from escaping the sea haven town. And as Noon says in his articles, the internet, virtual reality, and postmodern media culture exemplifies Baudrillard's idea of concept of simulation, wherein models do not reflect any tangible reality but supplants it entirely. And this is very particular in these two movies, which constructs the artificial realities that dictates their protagonist's existence. Well, in the Truman Show, we have the character of Christoph, who can be seen as a omniscient presence in the life of Truman Show, which does not allow any private moment in the life of Truman. And he can be seen as a Foucauldian panoptic gaze. The panopticism is a concept is articulated by Michel Foucault, which is the ideal prison from which prisoners can be seen through any angle and all the time. In similar way, the Christoph sees Truman of 24/7, and for the Matrix, where artificial intelligence governs the human consciousness, these both films operates on the mechanism of the control. To continue to add more onto the role of surveillance and control and postmodern aesthetics of the movie, director Peter Weir and cinematographer Peter Biziou collaborated to construct an artificial world in the movie Truman Show. They have created quite meticulously constructed ideal world, which is kind of a utopic world for Truman. If you have watched the movie, then you might get to know that how the ambience of these of this utopic town, Sea Haven, is constructed. They were after the heightened reality, the simulated world for Truman. And at the heart of all of the spectacle is Christoph, who is a controller, as I have said, who dictates the Truman's life and who takes the agency on behalf of Truman, and he can literally control everything in relation to the Truman's life. Like there is one scene where he can start rain anywhere in the town, and also he can also change weather at his whim for Truman. And as for the Matrix, we can say Morpheus says this, that the Matrix is everywhere. It is all around us, and it is the world that has been pulled over your eyes to blind you from the truth, blind you from the reality. And I have done also the Lacanian psychoanalysis, in which there are the four stages: mirror stage, imagery, symbolic, and the real. Just like an infant who sees him or herself in the mirror and have a kind of construct of unified whole. In the similar way, Truman also sees himself in the mirror and believes that his identity is totally formed. He is a uniform identity who is asserting his agency. But as he moved through the imaginary and symbolic stages of the Lacan, he comes to know that his identity is a fragmented one. And this particular scene where the studio star falls onto him, then he comes to realize that no, there is something wrong with his life. There is something wrong with the town he lives in. So in that way, it helps to this kind of entering into symbolic realm of language and cultural construct. He comes to know that no, there is something wrong with it, and this leads to his rebellion in the later part of the movie. And as for Neo's fragmented existence, it existed within the structural order of the Matrix, which is also similar to the mirror stage. And in his imaginary order, Neo is a corporate employee who thinks that his life is good in this kind of a corporate employee. But later, in the scene comes that he has to choose a red pill or a blue pill, and red pills will allows him to confront the reality, and so he chooses the red pill. And to add in the breaking free of the protagonist, rebellion and liberation, we can see that many characters in the movie tries to prevent Truman from seeking the outer world, the reality. And the Christoph says that as Truman grew up, we were forced to manufacture ways to keep him on the island. And one of the things that Christoph does is that he staged the death of Truman's father by drowning him into the river, and by which he tries to prevent Truman to getting out from the utopic town of sea heaven. And Neo's godlike transformation also suggests that he has merely assumed a new role within an ongoing struggle rather than achieving a definite liberation. In the psychoanalytic struggle of the Neo, we can see that he moved from the self-doubting phase, and he knew that there is something wrong with his life. So he confronted his self-doubt, and then he assumed the role of the new, which is the liberation of which he will do later on, the liberation of the humanity. And Miscolon and Berselin says that Neo's journey is a profound allegory of the psychoanalytic struggles and the process, emphasizing on the active confrontation over the passive escape. Just like Truman does, he passively lives his life, and at the very later end, he asserts his identity, and he wants to came out of that life. But with Neo, he confronts his identity actively within the hyperreal system of the Matrix. And my chapter 4 talks about Fight Club. And Fight Club, we know that it is a movie directed by David Fincher, and it is adapted from the novel of the same name by Chuck Palahniuk. And in this movie, we can say it is a cinematic manifesto against the hollow premises of consumer capitalism. And as Heffernan says in one of his articles, that this movie is one of the particular movie where cinematic adaptation is very faithful to the novel, and even it gives the very idea of isolation, commodification, and the fragmented identity of the narrator Edward Norton, the very clear manner, more than clear from which portrayed in the novel. So self in this movie, the self is no longer defined by the personal experiences, but by the product that one owns. In the theory of hypermarket, Baudrillard have said that there is the vast myriad of the things that are there to be consumed by the people, and in this kind of shopping experiences, the things of these things becomes more important, and this fractured identity leads the narrator to assert that everything is a copy of a copy of a copy, which aligns with the Baudrillard's idea of the simulation. And we can also say that, as Bradshaw and Jonathan said, that the mood of the Fight Club is in one way a zeitgeist time capsule for the drifting self-questioning the late 19th. We can say that this movie, Fight Club, encapsulates the very zeitgeist of the 19th century, of the late capitalism, where everything is commodified, the culture itself is commodified, and in this movie, the identity is commodified of Edward Norton. And his insomnia and emotional detachment signifies not just personal oppressed, but a deeper alienation rooted in the late capitalism. And we can also understand this by the Freudian analysis of the Freudian psychoanalysis, where he says that id, ego, and superego, there are three parts of the psychoanalysis, in which id represented by the Tyler Durden, ego represented by the unnamed narrator, and the superego is a societal construct. It is a societal construct, and the narrator was not able to fulfill or satisfy the societal construct of the materialism. So that is why, to eradicate the materialism, the primary self, the primitive self of Tyler Durden, who is sinister, came out as a form of Fight Club, and he later also established the Project Mayhem. But it also becomes a kind of a cult military organization which demands blind obedience. So in this way, this act of resistance can be observed, and it is observed in this movie, into the very structure it opposes, the very structure it tries to dismantle. And to conclude my dissertation, contemporary cinema engages with the themes of surveillance, ideological control, and the crisis of identity in the world where the distinction between the real and the simulated has become increasingly blurred. And in such a hyperreal world, the perception is increasingly manufactured by the media, and perceived reality are fabricated, structured, designed to keep them passive. And every act of defiance risks become another mechanism that reinforces the thing, the very system. So the thing that we need to keep in mind, that we need to uh, critically navigate the hyper reality by living in it, and we have to be self-aware of hyper reality. And the scope for the further research that we can do is the postmodern films influences audience perception, and we can do the audience reception studies also in this, to know more about how the hyper reality engages with the people's life and how it shapes the people's view towards the hyper reality. And this is my bibliography, and thank you.